Greetings, nerds. This is Cena Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Balk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well, Sarah. Hope you're having a good Tuesday evening.
Yeah. What were you going to say?
I just had a moment since we recorded last night, and I had forgotten to take down the banner from like the show, sort of visit our website and all the where to find us on socials. I was like, oh, let me jump quickly back to the welcome to the show. And welcome to the show, everyone. It's Tuesday, May 6th, and we're back on our normal night.
I like how there was a question mark at 6 because my show notes still are all May 5th, May 5th.
Yep.
I was lazy. I'm like, I'm not making another document. It's going to be May 5th.
No.
All of these things. But yes, we are here to finish out the content this week with The Last of Us Season 2, as well as talking about the Thunderbolts in the second half of this conversation. And because, like, between Thunderbolts and that launching over the weekend, and we already talked about Andor, like not much news right now that we're dying to talk about. We just want to get straight into these shows and movies that we love, and we have some opinions to talk about. So that takes us into The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 4, Day 1. And it's a cold open in Seattle back in 2018. Oh, before I move on, though, Will always likes me to read the IMDb summary. So it says, in Seattle, Ellie and Dina find themselves amid a brutal battle between the zealous Seraphites and a ruthless militia. Cut to 2018 Seattle quarantine zone. And freaking Josh Peck, I did not have it on my bingo card that he would make an appearance in The Last of Us. Did you know about that? I feel like no one knew about that.
I don't think no one knew about that. I did not, but whenever he does show up in the cold open in 2018, and whenever he was telling that story, I was just like, oh, okay. I wasn't expecting it, but and I did read an interview with him where he was talking about how he ended up on the show, and but yeah, that was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, and
I think,
he's
yeah.
it was a good part. I feel like every now and then, I feel like the last time I saw him, though, correct me if I'm not wrong, he was in oh my God, why can't I remember?
I remember him from Oppenheimer.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
for some reason, wanted to say a word that started with an I, but I'm like, it's not Inception. I'm like picturing Christian Bale
Yeah,
or
yeah.
not Christian Bale. Oh my God. We're moving on. So Josh Peck playing a federal agent or a federal officer talking to a bunch of others. And they're talking about the voters.
Mhm.
And then one of the new officers says, why are they called voters?
Yeah.
And in the distance, you just hear the voice.
Yes.
You're like, okay. I Jeffrey Wright.
Mhm.
Now, I'm used to his voice because we did cover What If.
Yep.
But this is a different voice because
Yeah.
this voice, it's dangerous, it's gravitas, and I'm like, I've missed the quote unquote evil Jeffrey Wright presence.
Mhm.
And he's not so much evil because in this scene, he explains, like, his introductory remarks are, we took away their rights and someone called them voters to mock them.
Yeah.
And this is our introduction to Isaac. And this scene, not in the game. And so I was even like, well, you're a federal agent. Okay. I don't know what's going
Mhm.
on here. This is interesting. I literally thought to myself, well, are we going to spend all episode in like 2018 Seattle?
Yeah. Mhm. I
For
did
a
too.
moment,
I did too.
yeah, it gave off that presence. And so what were your thoughts as he leaves the vehicle and goes and meets the what we assume are the WLF, or the startings of the WLF.
Yeah, so a couple things about that scene. One, like you said, the voice, and also whenever I was hearing him talk about, whenever he to the other people on there, on the van, on the armored vehicle, and when they stop and all, you could I could sort of sense the undertone of disgust
Mhm,
in it.
mhm,
uh, Even though I didn't know Isaac from many, I have not played the game, so
mhm,
I'm aware of Isaac, the character that Jeffrey Wright played in the game, and of course here now in live action. But whenever they got out and they saw the people there in the town in Seattle, I was wondering where was this going to go?
right.
Because on the one hand, I was just like, is he going to, or were these people going to bum rush the vehicle? And
Mhm,
because especially given what we had just heard from the story, and then it happens. Yeah, and because he also has the other, the new kid
yep.
to jump off the vehicle, and it really just set up that, he basically, like, he knew what he was intentional about it. He knew what he was going to do with those guys, the Fedra agents, remaining people in the vehicle at that point.
It was his
Another,
initiation.
yeah.
It was like, okay, like, you're gonna betray these people so you can
Mhm,
join our side. They're
mhm,
gonna lose some of theirs, and we're gonna gain you and this other kid. And I like that line because she says to him, "Welcome to the fight." And he turns to look at the newbie and
mhm,
says, well, now you need to make your choice. I already made mine. And I'm
yeah,
giving you the option. Those assholes I could care less about. They're gone.
yeah, they're gone. Yeah, yep.
Yeah, there was no saving them.
Yeah.
And what I think now, granted, I haven't listened to a lot of people talk about this yet, but the more I think about this scene and the next scene, because we only get Isaac in 2 scenes,
Hmm.
I find it so fascinating because and we're going to get into the discussion and the setup and all of that, but I'm going to cut to the end where he's having this back and forth with the Seraphite during the
Yeah.
interrogation. And Jeffrey, the lead, now what we assume is the leader of the WLF, the Wolves.
Yep. Hmm.
He says we have the technology, the manpower, everything. All you got are arrows and a spiritual belief and all this. You don't got shit. And the Seraphite just looks at him and says, every day one of your guys
Hmm.
leaves and joins our side.
Yeah.
And no one has left the Seraphites to join the WLF.
Hmm.
Now, why I think that is such a good line is mainly because we saw already at the beginning of the episode in the cold open Jeffrey leaving Fedra to join the WLF.
Hmm.
And so I feel like in that moment, and that's why it really pissed him off, is like he's already portrayed one, like he knows it's true because he himself and probably a lot of Fedra or a lot of WLF have betrayed one allegiance or another to join the WLF, and so they're just gonna betray again. So it's a really nice ending for what they've already set up in that cold open with Isaac.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, they set that up. And also, another thing I thought about it too, especially with the torture scene, and I completely agree with you. The you know the Seraphite, being so, devoted to his cause, But also, at that point, I think when Isaac took the actions that he did against the Fedra team,
Mm-hmm.
he basically, he had enough,
Mm-hmm.
and he and the story that was being told about how the agents, what's his name, Greenberg or whatever, was like, beating the person up,
Mm-hmm.
and he Isaac had reached the point where this is just wrong, and this has got to be stopped. And so we fast forward to the torture scene. It's in the to me, I took it, at least my interpretation of that scene was, he is now basically those agents, the WLF, or like the toxic agents that are doing atrocities, to the, where he's like torturing this man, using this in a very sadistic way with this monologue about how he would use Williams and Sonoma of cookware to, impress a woman, and
Uh-huh.
and so I was just like, man, remind me of the line, if you stick around long enough, you'll become the villain, and he's now the
Right.
villain.
Well, yeah, he's the villain in someone's story.
Yeah.
He's the hero in his own. It's the
Yep.
classic trope. But
Right.
where I thought you were gonna go was more into that idea of like the right up into the circle. The circle
Yep.
of like, you killed our children.
Hmm.
We wouldn't have done that if you didn't teach them to shoot at us. like
Yeah. Yeah.
like
There's that
you
too.
did
Yeah.
this, you broke this alliance,
Yeah.
you did that, you did,
Yeah.
like it's always one up.
Yeah.
And so what we're seeing is we're seeing a bigger version, a more worldview perspective of what is going on with Abby and Ellie.
Yep. Yeah.
That has to do with two deaths,
Two does.
which
Yeah.
two
Yeah.
deaths, but
Yeah.
then it gets
But
amplified.
yeah.
So
And the other thing too, I thought of, when we first meet the Seraphites the prior week, they were cast as victims in
yes,
the third episode. So that also, when I was watching the scene, my immediate thought, especially when he was torturing this individual, because at that point in the episode, we still hadn't seen the atrocities
exactly.
that the Seraphites have done to WLF in Seattle. So it just, again, to your point too, the whole circle is just it.
Well, it's a great
Stuff.
way to put us in Ellie's eyes,
Hmm.
because she had the same thoughts that we did
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
that previous episode, to be like the wolves did this,
Hmm.
and like Abby's crew did this,
Hmm.
and with nothing to, like, not knowing the situation or any no context
Right.
really. And
Right.
then so we see Isaac portray Fedra in the opening, we see the torture scene. The next time we see Seraphites or WLF, you got Dina and Ellie walking in on a massacre, a mass hanging, and it's the W wolves hanging from the ceiling, and on top of that, if that wasn't worse, their guts are hanging out of their bodies.
Yep.
And then on the wall it says, doesn't it say, like, if you believe in her?
Yeah, yeah, it's like a little, yeah, they reference the Seraphite
The
deity,
prophet. Yeah,
the
the
prophet,
prophet.
yeah, the prophet,
Yeah,
yeah,
if
yeah.
yeah, and it's all, I kind of wish that I no, feel her love, that's what
Feel
it
her
says.
love, yeah, feel her
Feel
love,
her
yeah. I was
love.
looking in the
And
notes, yeah.
and so what I think they're doing a very good job is, again, we said this last week, things are too quiet.
Hmm.
Things are, and I was thinking about this last night. I was thinking about how we just got done talking about Daredevil Born Again. And
Yep.
I talked about it while covering that show with you. I talked about how it was like you can hear a tea kettle,
Hmm.
like, just starting.
Yep.
And now I feel like the tea kettle here it's like not even on. but as the further we get into Seattle, the more it's like, Ellie, you might want to reconsider some things.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I don't really know if you know what you're like. And Dina, I feel like you keep telling Ellie like, you got no plan, we shouldn't do this, so here, follow my lead. But let's be honest, Dina, I don't know if you got much of a plan either. So abort. um but they're doing it in a good way, like to what you said, like one moment you feel sympathy and then you see the mass hanging and you're like, okay, I really don't know the conflict that's happening
Yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah. There's the conflict that's happening there, and again, we're in a, and then of course, we'll get to it here in a bit. But to your point about things being quiet, we hadn't seen any of the infected yet. But
Exactly.
so that was another thing. As I was watching this episode as it was unfolding, I was like, I was thinking back to our conversations about the different factions, especially once when we saw the clear uh, back and forth of violent acts that were being undertaken by each faction with the Seraphites and the WLF. And but then the thing that what especially as we see this post-apocalyptic world, the and the tribalism, and we've talked about this before, especially like when with the first part of the season when uh, Joel and Maria were having a conversation about any more refugees coming
Hmm.
into the camp,
Hmm.
and 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 so in so many, and of course in the first season we've seen the various factions when Joel and Ellie were going across country trying to find Tommy. So it's just to your point about the world growing, and but also before it was just it was a much smaller the conflict between Ellie and Abby, but now again getting the bigger things that's going on in Seattle, as Dina said, what the fuck's going on in Seattle.
Yeah.
uh
Yeah.
and and the tribalism, and that even though humanity's been through this cataclysmic event, the people's prejudices and resource allocation and survivalism, all those things really are a full display here, that even after there's only like however many people, obviously there's no census done, there's no how many people are still alive, but whoever's remaining, you would think that at this point people would be like, okay, we gotta put all this old bullshit behind, and we got to work together to survive. But no, the things that happen, and I guess we even saw that in real world context too, with COVID. I mean, whenever the thing first happened, everybody was just like, oh God, we got to get a mask, we got to help each other. I mean, neighbor looking out for neighbor. But by the end of it, as we progressed down the event, people felt in many ways back to some selfish old habits and stuff. So I mean, I just really like the way that The Last of Us really just presents all of these, like, what if presents these like things in this story and in this TV show, and also clearly in the game, the source material probably has these elements as well, that make us really question, like, what are we doing here, and why are we doing it?
Um and so, because you already brought it up, might as well talk about the big infected sequence that occurred in this episode. I will admit I got a bit bored and I thought it went on too long.
Mm.
but but it allowed for Ellie to save Dina by getting bitten by an infected and allowing a truth and a consequence. And again, something that I really appreciate about this show is the mirroring,
Hmm.
because the whole sequence with Dina trying to grapple with Ellie and potentially being infected, and losing her, while Ellie is trying to be like, okay, how do I make sure she realizes that I'm immune?
Yeah, yeah,
like if I told me that, I wouldn't believe me either. I like that
yeah,
line.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. And
it
I
it
like the way.
all Oh,
Go ahead.
sorry. I was just gonna say, like, my point being, for me, I went to episodes in season one. I
Mm,
went to I loved the reminiscing of when Joel first found out, like when she was bitten in season one, and
yep.
Joel went through that very similar, like,
Hmm.
you stay there.
Yeah, yeah.
You stay
That's what I
right.
was about. That's not. Yep.
Yeah.
I was just about to bring that up. Yep.
Yeah. The other episode, though, was Ellie's flashback episode,
Hmm. Hmm.
and that they even hint at in the previous episode
Yep.
this season is that, like, in that sequence, it was her first love who wasn't immune, gets bit,
Hmm.
and she has to kill her.
Hmm.
And you, because of that episode, I think that's why it's so much more powerful of when Dina, like Ellie wakes up and Dina realizes the truth and is like, I'm pregnant, and they kiss
Yep.
and they do more. But
Yeah, yeah. It was
like,
a very, very, very nice moment. Very, very
yeah,
touching moment, and it was,
yeah,
yeah, and it was all set up with when they first get into Seattle. We see, they in the district, in Seattle. We had to saw the pride, and and also one little quick note about that too is it gives us the context clues as far as, like, when the world ended and The Last of Us, same sex relationships and stuff weren't as they are, as accepted as they are in real world, in real time, as far as, like, after the world ended. In the real world, but in that world, it was still the 2003 is when it happened
it
in the
was
game,
it
in the
was
show.
in it was in early 2000s, I believe. But see, like, then why were there rainbows everywhere?
Well, it was a very accepting district of Seattle.
Okay, okay. I was just like, I don't know if that's what they, and
Yeah,
then
so it was, yeah.
yeah,
And
go ahead.
yeah, there's that, and also Dina's reaction, not knowing, like, like she mentions, I think her mother, like, says, you must like boys. That comment. So there was, so there was still a lot of that, still that, her, her mom not accepting her bisexuality, for example.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
that wasn't set up, because she
yeah.
explains that after they get
Yeah, she
together.
explains it after, but I'm just saying this in the setup was, setup was just
Okay, okay.
obviously to take on me, when they're in the
Well,
music
I
show.
mean I mean, we've known that Dina has had feelings for her
Yeah,
since the first episode, because they kiss at the
yeah,
carnival
but
thing. Yeah.
yeah, but they've been, but even with that, they were trying to play it off. It's like, no, I was drunk. It was it was never. I guess we know Ellie had feelings for her, but
Yeah, obvious.
Dina was still trying to mask it with Jeremy. So
Um, I'm just more curious about, how surprised you were that Dina's pregnant.
I was.
Okay.
That Yeah,
See,
yeah, I was, 'cause
I
see,
held my tongue so
yeah,
much last week, because the moment she sees the Seraphites and throws up, I'm like, "Oh my
yeah,
god, I'm only gonna say something if Will mentions that at all," and you didn't, and
yeah,
I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna
yeah,
sit on this."
yeah, yeah. It was, yeah, 'cause when she threw up then, and then, of course, even whenever she threw up in this episode after
Well,
seeing the
that
WLF hanging.
what did you think, though, about the medical supplies? Because I thought that was a more like,
The
"Hey,
the
guys."
Yeah, when I saw the monostat, I was like, "Oh." But, at the same time, I was just, but I also went back to, like, season 1 when Ellie was, rummaging through that convenience store. So, and even when she was like, "I need to pee,"
Mhm.
I guess I, I should have known better. I mean, just given the father and been through that like twice.
I
But
To me, the fact that you did it means it played out perfectly.
yeah,
Because
but yeah,
because sometimes they over broadcast stuff like that, and I'm
mhm,
like, you're making it too obvious. You don't you We want to be as shocked as Ellie and be like,
yeah,
which is a great line. Holy shit, I'm gonna be a
be
father.
that. Oh, yeah,
I'm gonna be a dad.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and
It could, yeah.
yeah, and then to go back even a little bit further, take me on, or take on me. What is the song called? Which
It's not. Yeah, it's take on me by Aha. Which
take
apparently, yeah, which apparently, I don't know if I was listening to the after show with Druckmann, but the one of the members of the band actually I think was on set or something like that, and was really flattered that they used that particular song. Apparently, yeah,
Well,
just to,
they
yeah,
used it in the game, and
mm.
and
Maybe that's what it
that
was. Yeah,
and okay, this leads me to one of my overall thoughts about this episode
yeah,
is this episode, the way the cinematography, especially in that scene, worked.
hmm,
Oh my god, it was just like, it's the first time watching this show, and in particular this episode, where I'm just sitting there watching it and I'm thinking to myself, "Oh my god, this looks like a video game."
hmm,
And usually when people say that, it's negative.
hmm,
I mean, before Thunderbolts, they showed the Tron trailer. It was one
right.
of 2 trailers I had to sit through.
Oh,
Fucking bastard.
you're lucky. You only had two. Have like 30 minutes here in Durham.
Oh, I know. Trust me,
Yeah.
I looked at my clock and I was like, yeah, I went to the bathroom when I first walked in. I was like, they're about to play Superman. Will made me watch that trailer like twice already, so I'm out of here. Go to the bathroom. Anyways, so the Tron trailer, I
Hmm.
was sitting there and I was like, this looks like a video game. That's not a good thing.
Yeah.
It looks like CGI. It looks fake.
Yeah.
It looks artificial. But the way they have constructed Seattle,
Hmm.
Jackson, this whole show feels like the game in the best ways.
Mm.
And like, there are certain scene I mean, the scenes in the game are also beautifully artistic. And so
Mm.
to get that light and the just this beautiful moment, and the song, because yes, the song can be attributed to her and Dina, but it's also like the joy of it all and the
Mhm.
grief, and
Mhm.
it was so well done, and Bella sounded great.
She did.
She really did. And I love that. And it's juxtaposed with later on in the episode with the darkness,
Yeah.
like those two almost losing each other because of the infected, and and then that bringing them closer together, and then that hesitation to go further, which
Mhm.
I think is, I would have questioned them if they didn't. And Dina, honestly, I'm questioning you just a little bit. I'm like, yeah, yeah, sure, sure. You see that far away building? We're gonna go there. Did y'all forget in your, like, hey, we're in love? Did y'all forget what you saw in that room?
And yeah. Yeah, yeah, in that TV studio, that was, yeah. You still wanna do this? Yeah,
Yeah,
whenever they had a choice, it's like, yeah. But again, to tribal, the need for revenge and and how that is, we have a mission and and
yeah,
they we've got, that cycle of violence, it's just it's there, and but yeah,
And
but even yeah,
yeah, I can't get over this. I'm going back to the art of it all because
yeah,
when they go into the theater,
mhm,
I'm like looking and I'm like, holy shit, this looks exactly so cool. I'm just like, oh my God, that's the theater? Oh,
yeah.
okay. Okay. Starting to, yep. Okay. I'm so excited for the next. I'm like continuing to be excited. I will admit, initially coming off of this episode, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, I wonder, I really wonder how many people who don't know anything about this story, and especially coming off of the loss of Joel Pedro, like, are they still on the fence? Like, are they still
Yeah.
in?
Mhm.
And hearing you talk about it and hearing some others, I feel like people are still on board.
Oh yeah.
And because these last two episodes have been quiet, they've been quiet, but there's a lot of intentionality going on that I really appreciate. And I think
Mhm.
there are 3 episodes and an entire season left to play out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still on board. I mean, I think, as whenever we had the cold open with this episode, it, I was intrigued. Like I said earlier, I thought maybe we're gonna get a flashback, another
mhm,
one of those moments. But uh, when we get back to present day and just sort of, and I hadn't clearly I hadn't played the game, so I knew everything up to Joel's passing, getting murdered. After that, I am back to being completely ignorant of things. So I haven't seen any cutscenes or anything for about Seattle. So everything from our reviews forward, I am truly the audience member who hasn't played the game. Who now I'm curious. Now after watching one and almost a half seasons of this, I guess half seasons of this show, I'm like, you know what? Now I do want to play the game,
mhm.
but the things that, but yes, it is. I think this was the episode that really, for me, with Ellie and Dina, that dynamic and being able to, and the whole story moving forward as we have this Seattle piece. Yeah, clearly it's a different dynamic than Joel and Ellie. I mean, that's like the one that's like an iconic pairing like Batman and Robin. but
Hmm.
but but at the same time, I'm intrigued, like you said, the way that this show the story is unfolding, and even though, like, you're right. I mean, even though it was the scene in the music store did feel like a video game in many respects, and of course, whenever they were in a TV studio, when they had to go into stealth mode and all those kind of things to like evade a WLF in that moment, yeah, it felt very video gamey. But there was also a nice payoff from Ellie's getting Ellie's training from earlier in the season whenever she takes that guy out. But it didn't feel video gamey in a bad way, like when people say, "Oh, it's a video game adaptation." It really hasn't. So I'm 100% on board with this show, and I'm just really looking forward to just sort of seeing how things unfold as we go on this quest with for justice in Ellie's eyes against Abby for what she did to Joel.
Yeah. Yeah. Damn it. You set me up for a really good segue into our next topic, but you already told me during pre-show that you wanted to have a certain segue, so I guess we will do that.
No, we can no.
And
You do you do the segue. You do your segue. I will adjust.
oh no, no. Um I mean, to me, I don't even, my point about it looking like a video game wasn't about the action sequences at all. I didn't have that thought at all. It was mainly about the art direction of
Yeah,
the episode and the scenery. Like the design of it looked like not a video game, but the video game. And we've seen so many attempts at like, let's recreate this world and everything, but they go too far or they don't go far enough.
Mhm.
And that's where it falls apart. And that's the segue into Thunderbolts, where watching Thunderbolts, I have to tell you, and everybody knows, I'm not a big fan of action. And we will get into act 1, act 2, act 3 and all that. But there's a lot of action sequences in Thunderbolts where I was like, awesome. I was like, I was like, cool, 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 cool. I'm not bored. I'm not checked out. They had a good amount of comedy on top of the action, and they had some practical effects. And oh my god, I am so glad. I also I was sitting there watching Fantastic Four trailer, the other trailer I had to sit through for the fourth time. And all I thought about during that trailer was how Will made me watch this trailer. And so now I've already seen it 5 times.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
anyways, like I was also thinking, I also had a thought. I'm like, I bet you, because everyone's going nuts about the fact that Florence Pugh did this stunt, the opening scene is her going to be jumping off the building.
Yeah.
And sure enough, it was.
It was,
Um,
yep, yep.
it was. But yeah, so the big news headline coming off of this weekend, and also the fact that we saw this movie over the weekend, is that it's not called Thunderbolts with an asterisk, but it is called The Avengers.
Not only the
No,
Avengers,
or the New
the
Avengers.
new Avengers, yeah,
The New
yeah,
Avengers, I'm sorry. But
yeah.
they didn't put a Z at the end of it, did they?
No, so now the asterisk is now with the unfolding of it. They have the asterisk in front, and then the new Avengers.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I think
So,
they should have, I think for copyright issues, they should have done the Avengers, the New Avengers with the Z. Okay.
oh well,
I'm
to that point.
totally. Hmm?
So, yeah. Well, obviously, if you're listening to us, as you have watched a movie, I hope you have. Spoiler alert. Yeah, there is a copyright. It will. That when we go to the social media pages for Marvel, they added this today with the Avengers with the little copyright symbol.
Yeah, I'm not worried about spoiling this because
Yeah,
Sebastian Stan has already been seen on the streets replacing posters with the new
yeah, yeah,
title.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
like, there,
Yeah. There's been a whole dialogue about that. I
yeah,
mean, as far as whether or not, because I saw it yesterday, and then we can talk about the actual movie, but it was they dropped the big, I guess the end. I mean, one of the ending of the movie, for people who haven't seen it yet, and
don't
that
go
the
into significant detail because there is another spoiler in that.
oh, I'm not. I'm just, yeah, but yeah, they list, they dropped the new Avengers, and I guess for me when I first saw that, I was just like, okay, really sucks for those folks who, for whatever reason couldn't make it out opening weekend. And then also I thought, well, yeah, I was mixed of, it was, if you, I thought it was, if you're gonna do it, that's fine. Clearly, I was reading an article in the Hollywood Reporter. This was something that they had planned in advance. Clearly, as far as doing this rebranding, as far as what the, from Thunderbolts asterisk to asterisk the New Avengers. But I just felt like it was just too soon. I mean, maybe wait till like the second weekend and then do it. But clearly maybe they know something is, this is the studio after all that like kept people captured for like half a day with just with just a chair getting revealed with the actor's name on the back, for what they was they were unveiling the cast of
Mhm.
Doomsday. So maybe they know something I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah,
I could care less about it
yeah,
because I saw the movie.
yeah.
I went into the movie. I thought the whole time, I am so glad I refused to watch any trailers
Same,
after the initial one that gave
same.
away virtually nothing. I There were so many scenes that caught me off guard, only to then, after watching the movie, go down the rabbit hole of interviews, um, a few spoiler reviews, and for people to be like, yeah, well, you saw that in the movie, in the trailer, you saw that in the trailer, you saw Alexi telling Yelena,
Mhm.
like, I don't see your mistakes, I only see you. And I'm just like, I didn't see any of that in the trailer. Like, it
Yeah,
was awesome. It was awesome. I knew
yeah,
it was gonna be a pretty good movie, but I'm just so happy that like I knew nothing.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
weird.
I think as well, for new listeners, I will say that I was not enthusiastic about this film at all. Uh, and I guess as we got a little bit closer, I was just like, okay, I'll give it a fair shot. But when I saw it Saturday, and I was like, all right, I I mean I turned to my friend, I was like, man, the MCU is back. I really, and maybe I had, maybe it's, prisoner of the moment. Yeah, I was, but even after a few days after watching it, I do feel like it was a very solid MCU film. Um, and I really appreciated. I mean, even in the movie, just to there were a couple moments where I was genuinely moved by this movie. I think the story, and we can get into some plot details now. I mean, just really, there are a lot of things about who the villain was, and story beats and things that were in here that just really resonated with me.
Yeah, continue.
Yeah, yeah. So well, clearly starting with Elena, at the beginning, like you said, the scene, but that was in the one trailer, or of her being at the top of the second tallest building in Malaysia, and jumping off. But you know, from what I had, so whenever she did that, I was like, okay, she's a former widow and all that kind of stuff. So we got the spycraft things going, knowing she's probably, she's taking that role. So I was thinking, okay, we got a little Bond action, Mission Impossible vibe here. Um,
So I
but but
so
then but then
I'll
when
wa-
but then she was well, yeah. But I was let me just finish my thought, and then but then when she was talking, and she was talking about her, the feelings of um just this emotional state that she was in, as far as boring, predictable job, and she gets in there and with the lab and stuff. I was like, oh, they're going to a place that I think I might be intrigued by. I'm done.
yeah, I know. Yeah. I found that monologue interesting, because not because it went to that place, but because if you really think about that monologue and the day job, it's a
Hmm.
whole it's a satire for the MCU in general.
Yeah. Yep.
It's completely satire,
Yep.
and yeah, so we got Yelena doing that and setting it up. Um, I don't really know where to go from here, but
No. Yeah.
yeah, I guess the movie. Sorry, guys, I'm kind of tripping up because I hate repeating things that people have already said, and drilling down, I think, on the same points over and over again, because like the big thing that everyone's coming out of this movie kind of in awe of is how much it went into mental health,
Yeah.
which from Yelena throughout the whole movie, and then you have that juxtaposed with the Sentry, aka Bob, or Bob, aka the Sentry,
Yeah.
which it was funny because the one trailer I watched made it seem like the big thing was Thunderbolts. We can't be called that. Thunderbolts. We can't be called that.
Yeah.
But I swear to God, for the first 45 minutes of this movie, I was just like, you would die if you drank or took a shot every time they said Bob.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, they're hardly talking about the name. And then of course we do get into that the moment Red Guardian comes to save them in his limo. And he brings up the soccer team. And one girl even pooped. They won no games. And then it's just the like, I love the humor in this.
Yeah.
I think that like the MCU has always been given somewhat of a bad rap. Like, but it amazes me how when the MCU humor works, it works.
It works.
Like you only think about when it doesn't, which it doesn't. Ant-Man movies. I'm talking to you. But like what? You were
No,
ran for?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I know you. And also, he was not talking about the third one. He's talking about the fourth one. Okay,
Yep.
because we all know there's some comedic genius in Ragnarok.
Yes, we do. Yes, it's not Ragnarok. No. Love Thunder.
Yeah. But like, and I think why I was excited for this movie. And like going into it being like, I don't care if I don't really understand this concept or think like, why do we need this? Like these characters are ancillary. I was just like looking at the cast and like, I like it. I like you people. And they seem to like each other.
Yes.
And they seem to have like the chemistry. I wanted more of just like when John Walker and what Ghost's real name is Eve, isn't it?
Gosh, what's Ghost? I can't.
Ghost or Mel. No.
Mel.
Mel's Val's sidekick. No, when Ghost, John Walker, and Yelena are in the back of the truck and they're talking about like, I got like this knife, this type of gun and everything. I'm like, can we get another scene here? Can we have this? I want the extended version. Like there were a lot of like small moments, and granted, those three in particular spend a lot of this movie together, but I just they bounce off of each other so great. And I like clearly they were having fun, and I liked it. And I couldn't help but thinking like, this is what was missing for me in Brave New World. Like I think Anthony Mackie has fun wherever he goes, but for some reason he could not bring the party to that movie, and it was lacking, and not even Harrison Ford could save it. Harrison Ford honestly was a big issue I had with that movie. But anyways, focused on the good. So yeah, like I think the humor and the cast chemistry just is what like allowed this story to really unfold in a way that has captured a lot of people's attention. And you are hearing word of mouth reach out. So we'll see what that means for box office week 2.
Yeah, I could 100% agree with you as far as the chemistry, and I think that was as the movie progressed, and so because at first I will say, Florence Pugh is a wonderful actress. No, I can't, and she is clearly the driving force in a lot of with a lot of respect as far as being a protagonist of this film. even though sometimes her Russian accent kind of failed her. And that was, I mean, if it did have a nitpick, I mean, that was one thing that did sometimes take me out of it a little bit. But the chemistry with the cast was amazing. And before we started recording, I joked with you. I was just sharing with you, some thoughts as far as like, everybody. Yeah, you're right. There's been a lot of conversations comparing this to Guardians and the mental health in the MCU, and it's just such a great, big thing. But there's been other clearly there's been other films that have addressed mental health issues in MCU. I mean, look at Thor and in Endgame, and of course Tony at the um in those films as well. And there's some other examples. I think the difference is with this film was one, was just you know we, it was the B characters, C characters, um and they really, we got to know some of the backstories with these folks, and of course with the shame rooms. But the thing that I kept going to when I was watching this film was I was thinking about Doom Patrol, the show that
Mhm,
we covered
mhm.
a lot, all seasons, that was on the old DC streamer app, and then later on HBO Max. And the broken characters, and the issues that they all were dealing with, and how, where we were talking about cast chemistry,
Mhm.
uh, in that show, how well it worked and just made us so enamored and related to those characters, as they were working through their brokenness and then coming out to become a superhero team. And I felt that was the analog that I kept pulling from whenever I
Mhm.
was watching this film, because, again, it was a very similar track where we do have these characters where all we can do is all we can do is shoot guns and jump, and they are broken characters for various reasons. We saw the impact of with John Walker, even though he was, Wyatt Russell. Hats off to him.
Seriously.
Yeah, I mean, even with Falcon and Winter Soldier, we were like, you'll see, he was a dick, and then now that he has Super Soldier, he's a dick times infinity. But he
Ye
was still relatable, and especially that moment whenever he was, when he touches Bob, and
Right.
he goes to the to the fall from grace, where he's doom scrolling about the incident that happened there, where he lost control,
Right.
and it just made it so relatable. So that's where I was thinking of, like, dude,
Ah,
that's when I, well, not relatable, but that's when
I
I
was
thought,
gonna say, Will, have you
no, not
ever beaten
no, no,
somebody
no,
in public and then
no,
doom
I hadn't killed anyone in public, but I had, but we've all had those humiliating fails where it's just like where you do doom scroll, whether it's, maybe not being on, maybe at a public event
I know, I know.
like
I
that.
know what you're
Yeah,
getting at.
yeah,
I think the
yeah,
comparison to Doom Patrol is spot on for
yeah,
the first season, okay? We all
yeah,
know
yeah,
how that show ended,
yeah,
okay? I
yeah,
have some major issues with that
yeah,
show.
yeah.
And I think that where something that I kept also going back to is more about a concept. And we've covered a lot of movies and TV shows in this genre together over the years.
Hmm.
And I always get annoyed when a superhero, I don't care who you are, when they're presented as being flawless.
Hmm.
And I think that's what people are not recognizing in these characters that are in this movie and this ensemble is that yeah, they're broken, but they have flaws. And they've also inadvertently, not necessarily even by choice, been given these powers. And that's why I thought it was such a clever move for them to face off against Sentry. Now, granted, um, really the villain of the story is Julia Louis Dreyfus, who also, come on, she's so good.
He is. finally, Yelena, finally, Valentina Defontaine.
Yeah,
finally
DeFontaine.
lived up to finally lived up to what we all were hoping that I think they were where they had tried to get her to, but this film I think actually finally actually captured it.
Right. And even with her, we see her touch Bob, and we see that she lived through
Hmm.
a not she witnessed her father being killed by Nazis.
Hmm.
Like, and then that little brief scene kind of informs, like, okay, now we understand more about where she comes from, why she's so, I must protect me, and
Hmm.
very conniving. So it makes sense. You're starting to put some pieces together about her. Um, I just, all of the shame room stuff, especially like the third act with Century. I'm sorry, not Century, the Void.
Hmm.
I'm probably in the minority. I did not really care for the art direction or the,
Hmm.
like, let me just point at these people and then they are shadows. I mean,
Hmm.
granted, we had a finger snap in a movie that, and people turned to dust.
Yeah.
But for some reason that was more effective for me.
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
but then once Yelena steps through, and you go into a room, and into a room, very Eternal Sunshine-esque,
Hmm.
Eternal Sunshine of Spotless Mind-esque.
Hmm.
I loved that. I
Yeah.
loved that it was very clear, these these quote unquote heroes or or they, like, that's another thing that they got right, is they didn't make this movie about a group of anti-heroes.
No.
They didn't make it about a group of vigilantes, because we've seen those movies, and those movies have fallen flat on their faces, because that is
Yep.
such a hard thing to do. Because, like, I'm sorry, us as consumers, the bad people have to be bad and the good people have to be good. These guys, like, to your point, they're Doom Patrol, they're misfits. They
Hmm.
are they are people with arguably some lackluster super abilities who 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 are trying to figure out, like, are in this weird in between. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not normal, but I'm not extremely special. So, like, who am I? And where am I? And they just get put together in the best circumstances. That's another strong point. Like, we are all used to, oh, the villain meets the, like, when two superheroes confront each other, they have to fight. Well, these guys were literally assigned to kill each other.
Yep.
Like, and that's why I think they arguably went a little too far with Sentry and the Void, and, like, the blacking out of New York, because at that point it was like, oh, you're starting to make this seem like they're trying to save the world. Like, it's not about saving the world.
Yeah.
And they walked very narrow, that line very narrowly, and didn't go all the way there, which I thought was important. And that's
Yeah.
why I'm fully behind the quote unquote world being saved with a hug. Okay. That was a nice group hug. It was a needed
Yeah.
group hug.
The group hug actually that's where I got moved, because yeah, it was just, you know, I think because again, all of these characters, even though the Ghost didn't have as much, I guess Ghost and Bucky, clearly we have chronicled their backstories. We saw, I guess, Ghost issues with trauma and stuff in Ant-Man 2, I think it was. And then of course Bucky, we'd all know about Bucky. So, and he even acknowledges that in the scene about, like,
Uh-huh.
okay, I've yeah, I've had my shame room moment. So he knows what his issues are. But I think the group hug at the end is like, I mean, I had a little tear in my eye because it was, by the time I got to that point in the film, I just really felt for these characters. And even though I guess, yeah, the void. I don't know. It's even, yeah, there's something about that blackness, and I know it's hard to it's hard to put that up on the screen in a way that captures that feeling of despair or whatever that people
Well, that
have,
doesn't
but
look cheap.
that doesn't look cheap exactly. But I think the story construct and the way that they had gotten up to that point, and then especially as they were going through the rooms, like seeing, Bob talked about how he was a meth head,
Mhm.
and then and then the chicken as they were going through the rooms and the chicken attack, whenever he was like spinning, whenever he was, you
You
know,
hit me with that sign one more time.
yeah,
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 yeah, like, the room
yeah,
stuff
everything about
worked.
it,
The
it
room
worked. And so
stuff
by the
worked,
time,
it was the
yeah,
others.
so by the time I got to, so we're in the third act, and usually Marvel third acts are just like, oh, go, here we go, the usual sci-fi, the usual special effects extravaganza, good, bad, or in between. I To me, the emotional core of the movie, and especially, I think Louis Pullman's portrayal of Bob, which was, and the connection between him and Yelena, made me like, yeah, I just connected, and it just like when that happened and the group hug happened, I was just like, man, I was like, damn, is it Misty in here? Because
Yeah.
it worked, it worked.
Yeah, it like they are now all stuck together,
Mhm.
and um they and I like arguably Century is so powerful, but because of his mental issues,
Yeah,
he's a ticking time bomb. Like
yeah, yeah,
he's a defective superhero.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's really ironic, and it's funny, and I am I'm still always looking forward to Marvel projects.
yeah,
Um I did I was right, because I did say, like, there's, I don't know, the one trailer I saw, I was like, I don't know, I like it.
yeah,
Um they like the cast, everyone on this cast deserves a shout out.
yeah.
And then I'm just gonna say, so David Harbour,
Mm,
I miss you on Stranger Things. I
yes.
know he's on Stranger Things, but this is the David Harbour of Stranger Things season 1. Like,
Mhm.
and I remember earlier this year when we were talking about What If, and we heard his voice, and I was like, I don't care if it's a lame Russian accent. I love him. He's so because he's so
Yeah.
much having fun. And I love the fact that throughout this movie, he arguably more than any of the other performances and characters is able to go so smoothly between, let me make a joke,
Mhm.
to let me be the most sincere, not your father, but pretty much your father, embarrass you. I love that
Yep.
embarrassing moment. I love it
Oh,
so
yeah.
much. But
Oh, yeah.
also, like, I'm so proud of you. Like Alexi is so good. I feel like now they're never gonna do this, but I need an Alexi in every single movie moving forward, okay? Because he's so, like, I have
Yep.
been missing the funny dad character, and the fact that we get that, and he's a quote unquote superhero. Like, it's like,
Yep.
oh God, that's so good.
It was. Yes. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, every time he was on the screen, it was just like yeah, because yeah, you're right. It never wore thin.
No, no,
Yeah, and yeah.
the whole ongoing joke about, like, that's another thing. Everyone coming, like, would think, like, oh, they keep saying Thunderbolts in the trailer because,
Mhm.
like, the asterisks and everything. I wanted them to rip off that title and put the whole ongoing gag in the movie, which is about who actually was the team owner or like manager. like that was the thing. And apparently I did listen to some cast interviews, and apparently the cast also, and I forget, I'm stupid and I didn't write down the name that they kept referring to of this person, but the cast themselves, while in Vegas shooting the whole limousine sequence, cast Mark Rylance as who would play that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I was listening to the director too. He was on the Midnight Boys, and I was listening to him talk about uh, the cast and the filming, and you know, and he was making very similar points that you're making about the show movie. And the other thing too is you could tell that they had a good they adjusted the story. You know, they had a story that they wanted to tell, and he was just profiling that. And then the writer strike happened, so everything, you know, they had it pencils down. But when they came back, they did some of the retooling, and one of the things that he noted is that they made Bob a central. You know, he had to be a part of the gang, and
Yep.
I think that's also when they did the rewrite. So I think that's another thing that, you know, that if that character had not been a um part of the group, then the moments that we were talking about in the third act just would not have worked because it wouldn't have felt earned. It would not have been earned at all.
It would be a completely different movie.
Yeah,
Like,
it would be.
and so what I'm taking away from you spilling that is that um because Will, you always point out, you always give people the excuse, oh, the writer's strike. Oh, the writer's strike. Oh, well, in this case, people actually made the thing better. That
Yes.
could have happened.
Yeah.
No more excuses.
We saw where it doesn't work. Brave New World, and it did work.
Well,
So
I'm not
yeah.
just saying Brave New World. You've been handing out
Yeah, I
that
know, but
excuse
I'm just
like
keeping it.
candy.
I'm keeping it
I
in the
know,
Marvel
I
universe
know,
right now.
I know.
But you know, speaking of things too, and I could with we brought up Lewis Pullman, and I think remember him from Top Gun Maverick, and
Wait, who did he play in Top Gun Maverick?
he played
Bob.
he played he Bob. Yes, so in Top Gun Maverick he played
He played
not Goo-
Bob.
yeah, no, but no. Yeah, my point. Yeah, I said no. I said I hadn't seen this is before. Obviously, he played Bob in this, but I said before the last time I think I saw him in was Top Gun Maverick.
Right.
I mean, I
No,
know he
he
played
played
Bob.
Bob.
I know, but that's not where I'm going.
Okay.
No, what I was going to say is I was talking about where I was going with that. My point is that with the casting and the different, if you, speaking of our point about different films, is Stephen Yoon, who of course does the voice
Mhm.
of Mark Grayson, was originally cast as Sentry,
Mhm.
and now I'm so that's another situation where because of scheduling and whatnot, I'm glad things worked out the way that they did because I think not no offense to Steven at all. I think he would have done just fine. But I don't know if I would have been able to separate Invincible from Century. You know, but one and then two, I think both Century, you know, but it's something you said earlier in this episode that I was thinking about with superheroes and stuff, and you know, Century being basically Marvel's version of Superman. Um, with being indestructible, you know, being an indestructible character, which the fact that he does have this split, this personality, you know, if he does, just you have to take the good with the bad with this character, and that's why when you get to the film, we he basically has to be on the shelf because yeah, he can do all these things, but the risk is that the void will come out and cause all kind of havoc like it did in this film.
Yeah. All right. Anything else?
No, I mean, like you said, yeah, I think to our point where we're just saying how this film is resonating, not only with us, but clearly it's resonating with audience scores and the critics. So people are feeling this film. It's 87%. As I pulled this from the Rotten Tomatoes this evening before recording, and audience scores 94%, which it's not just anybody can just go on there and do it. You have to actually leave a score on the tomato meter. You actually have to have bought the ticket to do to enter that grade. So yeah, I mean, I'm just really looking forward. Really enjoyed this film. Of course, we did have the mid credits and end credit. Of course, the end credit was filmed. The Russo brothers did that one to set up Doomsday and of course Fantastic Four. And I just referenced about Bob being on the shelf that we saw there at the end with the end credit there because of the risk that runs if he centuries out. So, but yeah, like I said, it was. I texted you Saturday after I got out of the theater. I was like, it was a pleasant surprise.
All right. Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me at Will M Polk, WILLMPOLK.
And you can find me at SJ Belmont, SJBLMONT. Please follow our crew on Twitter at Scene and Nerd, on Blue Sky at Scene and Nerd, and friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and Threads at Scene_N_Nerd, and visit our website, www.sceneandnerdpodcast.com. But most importantly, rate, follow, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get podcasts. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.